Hello, and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
On The Content Bite, we love an automation.
Oh, we so do. We so do.
Anything that saves us time is awesome, which is why I loved Rounded. It tracks invoices, so I don't have to remember who's paid me or who needs chasing up. And I was wasting so much time on admin, literally hours every week. And now it takes me about 2 minutes to send an invoice. I also really love the gamification of Rounded. You can look on the interface and look at all the little pie charts.
You set your targets.
Set your targets. It's amazing. So,
it is good.
Yeah, big thumbs
And if you're
up.
a gold member of Rachel's List, you're also in luck because you can save 20% on any annual Rounded plan. And see the show notes for details.
Hi, Lynne. How are you? I know you're travelling at the moment, aren't you?
I am juggling time zones. It's very early here in WA, but it's a little crazy, but lots of fun. And it's beautiful weather here in Perth at the moment, seeing family. And that's one of the great joys of freelance life and working anywhere I want.
It is, definitely.
Yeah, we have. And we've got such a fabulous guest on this week, someone I really admire and respect, and talking about the role of women in media and how to establish a non-executive director career. Shall I introduce her?
Yes, please do.
Wonderful. So Petra Buchanan is a company director with an international executive career in media, technology and business sectors. She provides strategic and governance expertise to organisations navigating growth in changing environments. She's currently acting chair and non-executive director of AMCO, which is the Australasian medical publishing company, a strategic advisor to Women in Media Australia, and an advisory board member of the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award Australia. She's also an executive coach and mentor. Previously, Petra was CEO of the McGrath Foundation and Astra, the Australian Subscription TV and Radio Association, and co-founded the digital startup 2Share, which became Sendall. She began her career with NBC News in the US. Welcome, Petra.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
I know you've been working in media for a while, Petra, mostly broadcast media, isn't it? So do you want to talk about your career journey and why you moved to director roles?
Sure thing. Thanks so much, Lynne. I guess I find it interesting when I meet people and talk about my career. I often have them reference me as a wild card. And at first I was like, am I to be offended by that? What does that mean? I've come to love it though. And what it means is that my career isn't just this linear path that was really predictable. And that's what makes it interesting, and that's what I've enjoyed. So, if I go back to the very beginning, I won't stay there too long, but I studied politics and journalism and ethnic studies when I was at uni. And I just knew I did not want to sit at a desk all day. This is before we had all the flexibility and technology we have now, but in that environment. And I love television. I love the broadcast medium, the impact that media can have in shaping narratives, the ability to tell stories, and then have them have this amazing impact on people and on society. And so I've moved, therefore, throughout my career across different industries. I went from media. I worked initially, you mentioned NBC News. I worked in the political unit on the Decision 92 coverage, which was the presidential election race, dating myself back a few years, but as a very, very junior person. And I quickly jumped out of that and actually went into cable television at the time, which in the 90s was just exploding in America. And I worked for the Discovery Channel for about a decade. And so I went from media, then after that, I went into technology. I really felt like I wanted to understand what, the impact could be of technology. And it was so different than media. People sort of lump these things together because they're rather technical sometimes. So I went into a totally different sphere in that regard. And I moved here to Australia then in the early 2000s. And then from there, I went into back into media, but in leadership roles, as you mentioned, running the Astra industry body, and then went into startups, not for profit, and now into governance. So each step of the way has really allowed me to build these transferable skills. And I think that women in media especially have tremendous transferable skills. I believe we can all do anything. And so, that coupled with, I guess, a sense of curiosity has just always meant that I've sought out opportunities that weren't exactly the next step, but seemed like the right step for me in terms of being able to delve deeper into an area of expertise or leverage up into a sector that I didn't understand, that I wanted to be able to better, grapple with and take my skills to the next level. So what may seem unpredictable on the surface, that wild card, is really for me about achieving outcomes. And so each step of the way, whether it's launching the Discovery Channel into new international markets, whether it was leading Astra, scaling up the McGraw Foundation, or now, really guiding strategy and working in a governance space, it's really about solving problems and seeing where that impact can be best made. So that's what has kind of brought me to today.
Mm.
Oh, interesting.
It's so interesting because what you say about how our careers are just not linear. Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? We do sort of, like, if I think about what I do now as opposed to 20 years ago, I just would not have believed, the change I would have been making in my career. But one part of your bio really piqued my interest because I remember reading about Sendle and how it was a big disruptor to Australia Post. So how did the platform that you co-founded kind of evolve into Sendle, and how exciting was it being involved in all of that?
The startup space is amazing. It's so dependent on, I think, the coming together of smart, dedicated people, but it's also right time and, how others outside of that immediate sphere either embrace what you're doing, support you, help to propel you. And I had the benefit and good fortune of working with some remarkably smart people. James Chin Moody, who started To Share at the time, and I joined with to work on and elevate that brand. It really was a platform about reducing landfill. So had this basis of environmental sensitivity around it. It was a double-sided marketplace, a little bit like Gumtree, where you're basically taking pre-loved items and finding new homes for them. But it was all free, and it was all based on what we used to term a generosity cycle of, people giving to others. But like most good startups, you have some kind of friction point that just makes what you're trying to achieve hard. And we found that we had a logistics issue. So, because people were they were showing up on the platform, we were building this amazing generosity, people were engaging it, it was really constructive. But then it meant you had to either go and queue up at the post office to get, one item to somebody else, or wait in your home and, invite them into your home. Like, that brings privacy issues, other things. So we really felt this friction point. And James came up with this great idea around using the idle assets of couriers. So at the time, 2010, couriers weren't readily available like they are now. And we'll come on to how we help solve that. But, it was corporate accounts that would have someone be able to come to a business, pick up something. So a lot of the time it was, a half empty truck that had 3 things in the back of it. And so we were able to negotiate with courier services for discounted access to better utilize that, meaning slightly later delivery times or different things like that. And so we provided it as a service to our To Share community that they could participate in that. And it became really evident really quickly when people started using the service for non-To Share items, because they just wanted to have access to, a courier service that was accessible. And so off the back of that, we actually turned it into a business called Sendle. And that is a thriving logistics and courier service for small businesses and individuals. It's got, it was an early B Corp. It's got an environmental sensitivity around it. And the business is now available here in Australia, but also in the US and Canada.
Oh, wow.
Amazing story. I want to also go back a little bit because we mentioned you were a non-executive director. Tell us what that means exactly.
Well, the non-executive director basically means that you're not working in the business, but you're advising the business with a deep commitment. So you have fiduciary responsibilities, which are to act impartially, independently, ensure no conflict of interest. There are financial obligations. You basically set the tone of the culture of an organization, and you're there to work with and guide the executive team. So you're working on strategy, you're working on governance issues, you're ensuring risk mitigation, looking at financial performance, but all at a very high level. And it's an amazing place to be in my career, where I've gone from being very hands-on to now in a space where you really are there to listen, to guide, to be a sounding board, and to share concern or ideas, perspective, etc., and to make sure that along with a group of colleagues in your board of directors, that you are providing the best guidance for that organization.
Oh, so interesting. What do you love about being a non-executive director? Do you think it's a good choice after CEO roles? Because I was looking at that myself at one stage.
Yeah, I think I would encourage anyone, and I think it is the diversity of who sits around the table that's most compelling. So I like it fundamentally on two levels. One, on a very personal level, I love working with a team of individuals that I find really inspiring, the collegiate nature of what it means to sit truly with your peers. And they are people that have such discreetly different career paths and experiences from myself. And so every time we engage in a conversation, I learn something. And I love that. So for me, that's already, I'm in an environment where I feel like I'm growing from that as well as contributing. And then the other piece of it is being able to work with the executive team. So having had all the experiences and that diversity of roles in my career, I now can, in almost invariably any instance, like I have well, I had a similar situation. Yeah. And you just have a wealth of experience that you can draw on. And it may not be exactly the same. It may have certain components that are starkly different. But what it just means is you can be reflective. And I think, therefore, have the credibility when you're engaging with those executive teams to add value to them that might be a perspective that they hadn't previously thought of.
Because they're obviously bringing you in because of your past experience, and perhaps they think you will be bringing those perspectives in and, ideas, perhaps helping them unlock ideas that or perspectives, like you say, that they wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, look, executive director roles can be very particular. So there may well be a board where they might be recruiting for a new director, and they are very clear that they need either, say it's financial, someone to run the risk finance audit committee. They know exactly what that skill set is. They really want that. Other times they're looking for broad thinkers. They might be looking for people that, like myself, have been the CEO of a company. You kind of, invariably, I tend to chair the people and REM committee of the organizations that I work with, because I've had deep experience with teams running, organizations, those types of things. So I think depending upon where you are in your career and what you've done, your skill set will be unique and sometimes highly desirable. And other times you're going to have to figure out what your narrative is. And when I talk to people that are making that switch from executive into the non-executive space, they really struggle, because in many instances, your job title has usually been your calling card. And that just explains who you are. It explains the company you work for. It's really easy. And I find that then transitioning into this space, you have to figure out how you talk about what are those transferable skills, where do you add value? And it's probably not dissimilar from a lot of the individuals that are in your community listening today. These are individuals that might be freelancers now. They've no longer got that business card or, job title that just allowed them to, get through a door or have someone easily understand their worth and their value. So spending a little bit of time to actually figure out how do you talk about what it is you've done and how you can contribute is, I think, very powerful.
I think that's a huge issue for freelancers in a lot of cases, just not knowing where to, where to place themselves or how to sell themselves. It's something that we hear a lot, isn't it, Lynn?
Yeah, it is. The interesting thing, I also wanted to ask you, I mean, there's a whole conversation about women on boards as well. There's less women on boards. I mean, when you're looking around the table, are there less women there? Do you see a lack of women as an issue?
Yes, so statistically, yes, we've made some really good headway in terms of ASX listed ASX 300 boards. We're now at about 40% in the ASX 100, and the ASX 200 and 300 are a little bit below that, but all above 35%. So that's been through a tremendous amount of effort and energy that has gone into that and still needs to go into maintaining that and continuing that. And, I'm a big believer personally in quotas and in setting measurements and in whatever way it needs to be. But I think in terms of changing structural impediments and various processes, we have to set targets and therefore measure them and achieve them. So I think there has been some good progress in that regard. The challenge I find is that a lot of the same women, if we're talking particularly in that regard, are, because they have either gotten onto ASX listed boards, they form this very small circle of individuals that therefore are less risky. And so they get on the same boards, and more boards. So about 19%, and this is research out of Watermark, which is a recruitment firm that works a lot in the non-executive space. So about 19% of women directors get 45% of the roles. So there's a small percentage of women that are continually getting the same jobs. So we need to take an attitude of ensuring that we are building a pipeline and letting more and more people through the gates. I'd love to see that with recruitment processes for non-executive directors, that there is actually an obligation to be involving what they call emerging directors, so non-ASX directors. So I put myself in that camp. I've got board experience. I've been doing it for a number of years, but I don't sit on an ASX listed board. So I just will not get put on certain lists. I will not even be seen as a viable candidate. And there are a tremendous amount of incredibly capable women that equally would not be seen as viable. So that becomes, a vicious cycle, right? If you're not on a ASX board, you can't get on a board. So it just becomes a real stop at the gate. So I think that the next step is great. We've got metrics around women generally joining boards. I think we need to now show that intersectionality between women and women that have diverse experience, that are not your traditional pathway, that are not sitting on existing ASX boards.
Oh, so interesting. Yeah.
They're kind of losing out, aren't they, on so much knowledge and experience by only keeping, that core group on boards and not giving anyone else a chance.
It all comes from risk mitigation. So in some regards, makes sense. These are large entities, big companies. The stakes are high. However, if you provide room at the table to say, we will always in our, usually it's between 7 to 9 people that might be on a board, that 1 or 2 of them will be emerging. And then you just figure out a way to make that balance work so that you are bringing people on, because I don't think we should say, everyone's perfect and has all of the necessary experience, but if they're not given the opportunity, they won't gain it. So we have to actually make room at the table for individuals that we know have the capability to do it, but may not be there just yet.
One of your roles is sort of helping organizations, navigate growth in challenging environments. Do you see the same thing happening with women in media who are working in media and freelance journalists who are trying to sort of build careers and grow their businesses in challenging environments, especially right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think everyone's challenged in,
Yeah.
presently. I think the cost of living impacts, and if you're not in a traditional role with a salaried income, life just feels a little vulnerable. And so I
And
think
even
at
if
this,
you are,
yeah, and even if you are, you don't know what's coming next.
yeah.
We're now hearing, I think, starting to hear of redundancies and various things, and it feels like there's a wave that we're probably just starting off to feel. So I think, yes, it's a very real place for people to feel vulnerable and to feel like they're not quite sure where, you know, where the future is going and their place in it. And for those individuals, I think it's just really important to probably take stock, think about where you are, understand the world around you, make really pragmatic decisions that give you a sense of security and that you can feel like what you're doing is going to be right for now. Maybe you have a second thought about starting that business right now today, or you either take the completely opposing view and you go, if it's the riskiest time now and it's all things are going to be on the table, then maybe it's now is the time to actually just say, I'm going to embrace that opportunity. I'm going to put all of my determination into achieving an outcome in a given area if it's something that you've been really wanting to do. I think it's all personal at the end of the day. What is your own risk reward balance? How do do you have a little bit of self-funding to be able to give you some runway? And runway for me might be different for you, and I might want 6 months of savings in the bank before I feel like I can be in a position where I've got to go out and peddle for new clients. Or you might be happy to just have one new client and just hit the road and start doing what you need to do. And I think that self-awareness is crucial, though.
Yeah.
Now, you're also involved in Women in Media. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what your role is?
It's an organization that's actually 20 years young this year, which I find remarkable because in many instances, I hadn't heard about it until probably about 3 years ago when I got involved. It's one of those things that I guess I think there's actually a syndrome for it, right? Where we don't know about something, then it comes into our sphere of reference and we sort of feel it's everywhere. And I feel a bit like Women in Media is that for me, because I became aware of it 3 years ago and then have just fallen in love with, the community, the opportunity to help women, and also look at the organization and what does it need to do to grow to best achieve its outcome, which is fundamentally to try to help women thrive, try to make sure that they're environments where they're safe and secure, they have economic stability, all of those things. And so I came in to assist them with a strategic business plan and to think through what could they be doing. And that's, yeah, as I say, 3 years ago. And here I am today. I work with them very closely. It's mainly a volunteer run organization. So it's just amazing women putting time and energy into the benefit of all women that are working in the sector, because fundamentally media, as we sort of started this conversation in my career, I was drawn to it because of its both social impact, and the fact of the matter is that media now is like anyone with an iPhone. We're all in media today because we're on this podcast, so are various other people around the world. And it just means that the ability to tell stories, I think the barriers to that have come down so tremendously. And so whether you're in production or on technology side of things, whether you might be working in PR and finding pathways for your clients to tell their stories, or you might be freelancers and, ex-journalists and writing, I think there's so much capacity there and so much opportunity for women. We just want to collectively show that and shine a light on it. So one of the things that we have done for the last 3 years that I oversee for the organization is their research agenda. So I felt very strongly that without data to back up and build an evidence base around, well, how many women are writing bylines, and what percentage of women are being heard as experts in media, et cetera, that we wouldn't be able to start some of those really important conversations, whether it's with politicians, whether it's with other stakeholders, employers, just trying to say, do you actually understand how your employees, your women employees feel? So we, Women in Media does an annual industry insights report, which surveys women that are working across the sector. It asks them about how they feel about the industry's commitment to gender equality, which is pretty low. It's 56%, so a pretty negative view of the industry broadly. It asks about how they're feeling in their careers. Are they thinking about leaving their jobs? And all of those things that qualify whether the robustness is there for them to excel. Because if we don't fundamentally continue to support women in media to get the next job and the next job and to get into positions of leadership, we never break the structural dynamic. And what that means right now is that 70% of the time, men are leading organizations, they are in decision-making positions. And so women's voices are sidelined, their lived experiences are sidelined. And that, not only affects the leadership of those organizations, but as media entities, it affects what stories get told and, where resources are put. So that's where, I'm very personally passionate about the end game, which is how do we get to parity? How do we change that 30-70 scenario so more women are leading Australian media entities, have decision-making power? Because at that point, much like when I sit in a board scenario and it's a 50-50 of women and men, the dynamics and the conversations and what gets done changes for the better.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. So I'd love to ask about what Women in Media does with freelance journalists. Do you do a lot of work? Because I know I've been to a few Women in Media events and there are a lot of freelancers, whether they're different types of media. Like there weren't many written writers like me at those events, but quite a few broadcast freelancers and producers and things. So what do you do for freelancers?
Well, it falls into a number of categories because, again, we're trying to embrace a pretty diverse community of people, but professional development is one of them. So there's an annual conference, so that brings everyone together, and I find that it's a really powerful, positive, and I know you've delved into running conferences at the Content Bite, and it's a lot of hard work, but amazing because it can feel so powerful when you get all of these people into a room and the energy and the opportunities just start to fly. So I love that event. The event will be August 2025. It's going to be in Sydney again, and I won't preempt anything because I haven't announced all of the details yet, but that'll be a one-day conference and an opportunity for the full breadth of the women in media community to come together, which very much is made up of freelancers. And as part of that event, what we try to do is to create as much inclusion as possible in those professional development programs. So one of the things we're quite cognizant about is rural and regional women. So last year we worked with New South Wales government and we funded, it was 25 women to come to the conference. And so, and that includes covering the cost of their transportation and getting them their ticket to the event and all of those kind of things. So we're consistently trying to make sure that we are bringing as many voices and as many people that would naturally just might have barriers to being able to participate. And I do find that that is the case very much with the freelance community, is they don't have the backing of an organization that's got a professional development fund for, putting them into courses or allowing them to go to events. So really aware of that. And we really try to make sure that that barrier is not too challenging so that they can be included and involved in that. Last year, we also started a leadership development program, which is running. It was piloted last year for a number of women, and this year it's tripled in size. And so that's to the point I was making earlier about really trying to get more women into leadership positions. So that is a 6-month commitment. It does come at a cost. We are seeing that is probably more organizations putting individuals through that, but equally individuals can participate as well. So very happy and would love to share the details of that program. It's available on the Women in Media website. So that Empowering Women in Leadership program is another phenomenal way that people can get involved. We also have a number of awards and scholarships that are granted. And so something that has been ongoing for a number of years is the Carolyn Jones Award. So that offers younger entrants into media the opportunity to be in Canberra working at in the press gallery for a week. They get to introduce a speaker at the National Press Club and just be in that Canberra bubble of, immense power and influence, and that can be career changing for people. And all of the individuals that have participated in that scholarship have gone on to just do remarkable work. So we're really proud of that pathway that is building for younger women. We also have a scholarship program that gives $5,000 out of Queensland, gives $5,000 to individuals that are looking to seed a new, either bring in new skills or have a change of direction in their career. And so what we find is a lot of mid-career women sort of hit a bit of a wall. They, not kind of sure where that next opportunity is going to come from. They feel a bit stagnant, and they might have a fabulous idea, but it means they need to go and retrain. They need to invest in some skills or resources that's going to take them down a different path. And so that's another initiative. And I would absolutely encourage freelance women to participate in that program and see how that might allow them to elevate or take that next step that they were thinking of. And then outside of that, we do a lot of advocacy. I've talked a little bit about the research initiatives that we do. We do advocacy programs that then take that research and really try to make sure that we're amplifying it and getting it in under as many people's noses as possible, so that they start to just have a conversation, become more aware, and then make sure that they're taking empowering action versus, perhaps being passive. And the last one is that we last year received DGR funding, so deductible gift registration, which means that everything over $2 as a donation to Women in Media is now tax deductible. And so we're now starting on our philanthropic and fundraising journey, because all of this, as I say, is predominantly volunteer, but that's really hard to run. It's hard to do sustainably. We put in place our first general manager last year, a phenomenal woman named Kim Middleton. She's working hard. She's one person and trying to do everything I just spoke about, with the help and support of others, but that come and the go. And so we really do need, like any organization that's working in that space, to promote a cause, serve an audience. We need funding to do it. And so really pleased that we're starting this year that endeavor to facilitate charitable giving and raise funds for the organization.
How amazing. We'll have to, mention some of those initiatives in our show notes, because that's the first I've heard about a lot of that stuff. And I think it'd be really interesting for our audience. I wanted to touch on, some of the realities that we're seeing for print journalists and your thoughts on that. I mean, I just had a journalist contact me yesterday, and this happens all the time because I run Rachel's List, and a lot of that is helping journalists transition. She was saying, word rates are dismal, they're going down, job opportunities feel non-existent for me, and she wants to edge into copywriting and corporate work, which is something Lynne and I have done ourselves. So what's your advice to women who really are passionate about media and want to stay in media, even when it's so tough to do that?
Yeah, it's not an easy space to be in, but I go back to the transferable skills.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing like a woman that has been trained as a journalist, especially the way that their minds work, their ability to form and frame things, to ask the hard questions, and to do it with speed. I'm invariably, when I work with women in media, they are just quick, and a lot of other people want to, kind of assess and think and write and reflect. And that's all great. But my goodness, when you deal with a woman in media, they're just like they've already plotted out, what it is that needs to be achieved, and they're halfway there. So I think it's really being reflective of those skills that you have, but also through the lens of what you actually enjoy doing. Because I think that you have to take each of these transitions in your career, and as hard as it can be, sit in them and really think about what you really enjoy doing, what you find is a bit of a chafe, but you can cope with it, and what you just really don't want to have to do. And so does that therefore mean that you come together and pair with someone else that has some of those skills and that you don't, and so is it that you know that you don't really want to be isolated? That's one of the things I think I find when I talk to freelance women, and women that have transitioned out of working for an employer, is it feels lonely. It feels like they're on their own. And so I think that understanding your personality type and knowing how confident and comfortable you can be in that space is a first indicator, because do you need to find other like-minded people? So it may not be that you're just going out to do, copywriting or other things, but you're finding a collective. And I'm not saying that you have to set up some big company, but you're just finding a like-minded group of people so that you don't feel so alone. And I think you guys provide that for your audience, the listeners that are here today. They can hear in individuals like myself and other guests, wow, okay, it's not just me. And that's like the biggest penny drop for most people, is like, I'm not unique. Like, we all have these shared experiences, and it's so much more gratifying and provides us with a sense of security, knowing that we're not alone in that. So I think first and fundamentally is, how do you like to work, and what is your style of work? And therefore, who and what do you need around you? Because I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that you first have to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting trying to reinvent ourselves to make a living and to be successful. And that can be confronting for somebody who's always been in an office in that sort of structure. I mean, that's to me, one of the great joys of being a freelancer, that you can reinvent yourself. But yes, it is, that mindset shift is an interesting one.
We've mentioned a little bit off air about how you mentor upper level executives. And I would really love your opinion on, mentoring or coaching in general for people in a freelance space who are perhaps a bit at sea. Do you feel like getting the right coach, getting the right mentor can really leapfrog you to the next stage in your career? And so many of us don't do this. We sort of struggle a bit and try and work it out ourselves. But should we be looking at getting coaching?
I'm going to take a step back and say that I think we all need sounding boards, and we need to look at who can provide guidance and just be there as positive mirrors to reflect on. I am a little bit hesitant with, if I go onto LinkedIn nowadays, it feels like everyone's a coach and a mentor.
Yeah, it does.
And that I struggle with that a little bit. I've been doing mentoring for 10 years now, and I do it professionally. I get paid for it. I see this as a proper service that, people need to come to readily and be in a position where they want to look at things insightfully, make changes. They are striving for something different, or to get through something onto the other side. So I think that you can go have coffee with people, you can reach out to people. All of those things are absolutely important, and they are part of building a network. And I think asking for help is really, really important. I think it's just that differentiation from, stepping up to do mentoring. So I work with individuals for a minimum of 6 months. This is a commitment on both sides. It's not just having coffee. It's a rigored program. And I find it just an absolute pleasure. You're being let into people's lives. They are vulnerable with you. You must build trust. You must have respect. It really is about understanding who that person is and trying to help facilitate a pathway forward for them that is constructive and positive, and that possibly might be different than where their expectations were when they came into the process. And a lot of that is really just listening. I find that at the point I am in my career, whether it's sitting at the board table or working with mentees, it's actually just providing people the opportunity to share their views and opinions. Everyone is so time poor. Everyone is hassled beyond belief. I heard the word burnout so many times at the end of last year. I hope for everyone in 2025 that we can self-moderate a little bit better. It's really hard. And I find that many times when people that I'm mentoring come and we spend that time together each month, it's the first time they've got to go, and be self-reflective and think about what they want and where they're struggling and be really honest about it. And that only happens in a really trusted way. And so that's the joy I get from being able to show people how they've actually got the answers to everything that they want to do. But they need the time to be reflective. They need the environment to feel vulnerable and be okay with that, and to be in a trusted sort of nurturing space so that they can think about what those potential opportunities are in the future. And there may well be, and in many instances there are, low-hanging fruit about behavior change or something that they've just not been able to break through. And but just being in it, thinking about it, allows a lot of light bulb moments for people.
I love that, because I think no matter what stage of your career that you're at, like what you said about needing a sounding board, we all need that,
Yeah.
And this year I've started to meet more people in person, because I think so much inspiration comes from that. So many ideas, light bulb moments, like you say, come from, that coffee or that breakfast with someone you don't know that well, who might be a little bit ahead of you or whatever. It's really important. So I think that's, something we should all seek out as freelancers as well.
Yeah, and I think also, Rachel, I would say allyship. So seeking out, people that are beyond your existing network, cold calling them, writing. I have throughout my career reached out to individuals and said, I'm really inspired by what you've done, or I'm intrigued as to how you achieved that. Would you meet with me? I can literally think on my head, like less, people would say no. Most everybody is absolutely chuffed, really, to be approached, and that somebody wants to understand how they might help or what they did was important. And so I think everyone should always push through the hesitation of like, well, why would someone want to meet with me? I don't know them. Sure, if you get a soft introduction, if you find a mutual connection, even better. But quite honestly, there is nothing like a well-written letter to land in your inbox that makes you go, oh, of course I'll have a coffee. 9 times out of 10, they will.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what's coming up for you. Where do you go from here?
Oh, more boards. I've just rolled off of a board at the end of last year. It was a great tech board, working with some very young entrepreneurs that I really enjoyed. But we sold the business, hooray, which was great for them. And a really interesting experience for me. Hadn't been in that process before, so that was a learning experience, another tick in that box of curiosity and learning. And so now I've got some capacity. I'm looking for my next board role. So that, along with I'm chairing a board now, and that's a new experience for me. So that's taking quite a bit of time. We're doing a deep dive in a whole strategic 3-year plan. So lots of time and energy in that space. And then the causes that I love, women in media, continuing to prosper and grow and deepen its commitment. One of the other things I forgot to mention was that they launched something called the Women in Media Hub last year, which is a membership for the organization. And I would highly encourage your audience to check it out at womeninmedia.com.au and see if that's something that might be beneficial for them. It's got a real community network. It's about facilitating conversations, access to information, no competition, Rachel, but it does have a jobs board as well. And in that space, so really trying to provide some tools and a sense of community for individuals that, as we were discussing, you don't need to go it alone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, something we like to ask all our guests, and I know we're reaching the end of the podcast, is about the digital tools that you might be lost without. And I'm wondering if you have slightly different ones than what we often hear about.
I think I'm probably not too unique to others. I have definitely embraced AI note-taking tools. So I use Fathom, which integrates with Zoom and others. So I find that one's really useful. Just really great way to sort of make sure.
Fathom.
Yeah, you've just, kind of got everything that you need, wrap up that meeting, make sure the points aren't lost. So that's always great. I also probably came to it a little bit late, but, voice command, voice to text, sitting trying to type text message, takes so much longer than just speaking. So I'm trying to, use that more and more. It's just voice command in various ways.
Amazing. Well, this has been amazing, hasn't it, Lynne?
It has. So brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Petra. It's so lovely to do a deep dive, as you would say, into your work and some of your thoughts. It's really interesting. So do you want to tell our listeners where they can find out more about you, your coaching, your work with women in media?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, just Petra Buchanan. And then I do have a website, psbventures.com.au.
Fantastic.
And reach out to me. Like I said, I'm always happy to have a conversation with others as well. So happy to continue that. And Lynne and Rachel, thank you so very much. What a lovely conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks, Petra. Well, that brings us to the end of the show this week. But thank you to everybody who's listening. And please, drop us a rating or review on the platform where you find your podcast. And we'll put all the information that we've mentioned into the show notes so that you can connect with Petra or find out more about women in media and see if that's something you might want to get involved with.
Terrific.
Yeah, we'll see you all next week.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's list, you can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.